Well guys, it finally happened. The gunchucks are back. How is it going, everybody? I hope you all are doing well, but it's time to talk about and dive into the latest chapter of RWBY, Volume 5, Chapter 10, entitled True Colors. And I thoroughly enjoyed this week's chapter of RWBY Volume 5. I loved everything we got. That wrapped up the whole Belladonna versus the White Fang section of this week's chapter, because this has been a long time coming. I think this so far has been 3 chapters we have been following Blake's family fighting against the White Fang. So I'm glad we finally reached a conclusion to that section. And even during the beginning part of this week's chapter, I loved the whole section we had with Ozpin Crow talking with RWBY. But a majority of this chapter took place with the Belladonna household, with Gira and Son fighting against Corsic and Finnick, and then Blake trying to talk some sense into Ilya. And of course, I cannot forget to mention Kali, who was an utter badass in this week's chapter. I really wish we got to see how the hell Kali was able to take out Brother Yuma. I really want to know what happened, because I bet you that Kali is a better fighter than Gira is, and we just don't know it yet. So I was really excited just to see everything that kind of was just shown with Kali, just using whatever she was able to use. She grabbed that tray and just conked Brother Yuma over the head. Whatever she had to do, she did it off screen, unfortunately. But damn, I really want to know what Kali did to Brother Yuma that ended up knocking him unconscious. But the main topic of discussion that I see rising up from this week's latest chapter has to deal with Ilya's character. And these past couple chapters, ever since the plot came up with the White Fang trying to kill Blake's mother and father, I've seen the word irredeemable thrown around for Ilya's character, and I never really quite understood why people just immediately started abandoning on Ilya and were just looking at her character and saying, oh, she's irredeemable, she can never come back from this, she is forever gone and lost. But looking at what transpired, the events that she was actually involved in, none of the events that she actually did or took part in actually qualified her, I think, as being irredeemable. She ended up not really killing anybody. She was just going about this because she didn't really know what else to do. When you put yourself into Ilya's shoes, being a Faunus, born and just being raised within this world that is racist and prejudiced towards Faunus, growing up with that hatred and anger boiling up inside you, in most ways, she is very similar to Blake's character. But there is one key difference that she has over Blake, and that is that Ilya ended up losing her mother and father due to a horrific accident, and then witnessed the humans laughing at the fact that her mother and father ended up dying in some dust mining accident. So she has that pent-up rage and aggression towards the human race and wants to get away from that pain that she has for the human race. Ilya was that character that kind of saw the worst of humanity as she was growing up, and all of that pent-up anger and aggression, frustration, and sadness just built up to a point where all she wanted to do was make that pain go away, and was willing to do anything to make that pain stop. And I think one line that she delivered, you know, when Blake is on top of her and she just ends up breaking down and starts to cry, and the line that she delivers where she says, "I don't know what else to do." That right there, that line, I think really encapsulates everything that Ilya has been doing with this volume. All she is just a frustrated and very scared person that just wants to make all of the hate in the world towards her race and towards herself kind of just cease and stop. And so I can honestly see and put myself into Ilya's shoes and see where she was coming from, but I'm really glad just by the way that Rooster Teeth and the crew behind RWBY was able to handle her character, how it kind of came to a head within this episode, and then how they were able to resolve everything to where Blake was able to forgive her, and now she is on the side of good, joining Son, Gira, and Kali and Blake, and is about to go to Haven to fight against Adam and the White Fang. But I would definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on Ilya's character. I can totally understand how we all can view her character differently, her actions, and what ended up getting resolved within this latest chapter. So definitely leave your thoughts on Ilya's character down in the comments below. But with that out of the way, let's dive into each individual section for this week's latest chapter. And let's start off with the Ozpin and Crow section, because even though this section was kind of like the shortest of this week's latest chapter, there are some interesting things that kind of get brought up within this section. And the first thing that I really noticed is that Ozpin Ozpin, or at least Oscar Ozpin, is very optimistic, even though they are in a very grim place right now, no pun intended, because all of the huntsmen that Crow was trying to recruit, they've either mysteriously vanished or have been killed. So they understand that Salem's reach and power is starting to grow, and anyone that opposes her is slowly getting sniped out. But once RWBY enters the conversation, this is where we start to learn a little bit more about the relic at Beacon Academy. And what we come to learn, two things in fact. One, the relic at Beacon Academy is hidden very, very well by Professor Ozpin, and is in fact the most difficult relic to find out of all the ones located at each of the 4 schools. So that right there is very interesting. But the next question that RWBY ended up asking, I thought was very, very funny and kind of poked fun at all of the theorists for RWBY, you know, guessing that the cane that Oscar/Ozpin has within his possession is in fact the relic, but it is not the relic. So I'm really glad that they did clear that up, that the cane is not the relic. But the last section dealing with Ozpin and Crow has to do with them talking to Lionheart on the phone, and they already suspect that something is up with Lionheart because he came back very, very quickly with word from the council that he got the agreement to actually acquire more huntsmen. So Ozpin and Crow already know that something is afoot. They think that a trap might be being laid. It's a trap! So I am very curious to see with the next coming chapters what this trap is going to look like and how prepared Ozpin, Crow, and with the Team RWBY and Juniper, Team Ranger, how this all is going to go down. So that little section right there was really nice to have. And we even had a little section with Raven and Lionheart, but I feel like that section was very self-explanatory, and I don't really need to go that well in depth into that section. But now let's dive into the fight sequences of this chapter, the Belladonna rumble in the jungle that took place within this week's latest chapter. I absolutely loved it. First things first, I mentioned it before, I'll bring it up once again. Kali is a badass. I love that reveal by the ending of this chapter where she just busts through the door and just dropped Brother Yuma to the floor. And I'm really sad and kind of upset in a little bit that they actually cut away from Kali fighting Brother Yuma. But all I can now is speculate in my mind is just how powerful is Kali. What she ended up doing after, you know, she just bonked him on the head. Was that really all it took to take Brother Yuma out? Or was there more to their confrontation than what Rooster Teeth is actually showing? So once again, Kali a badass, MVP, absolutely amazing. But now let's dive into all of the fighting sequences that took place within this week's latest chapter. I enjoyed every single one of them. Blake versus Ilya was very enjoyable. I loved getting to see Gira going up against Corsic and Finnick, but I think the piece de resistance, the best section of this entire fighting sequence, was Sun whipping out the gunchucks and using them on Ilya. By far the best section, and I think I rewatched that animation loop, I think about 10 to 20 times. It was just done so well, and I believe we haven't seen Sun use the gunchucks, I believe, since Volume 1. And I can already tell that people are going to bring up Monty Ohm when they discuss this newest gunchuck scene. Don't compare it to Monty Ohm. I honestly think the crew behind RWBY did a fantastic job with that section. They won't be able to master what Monty Ohm was able to do, but I think they did one hell of a job in the name of Monty Ohm. They did a great job with that section. But talking about Blake going up against Ilya real quick, I really enjoyed that section as well because it really demonstrated Blake using her shadow semblance to her advantage, because we haven't really seen her use her semblance, I believe, since the beginning of Volume 4. And then Ilya used her chameleon faunus traits to her advantage when she dimmed out the lights and was able to walk around and kind of get the jump on Blake. But I had a question during that sequence, and I think many people might notice this as well. This kind of goes back to the faunus knowledge that we learned back in Volume 1. It's that faunus had great eyesight in the dark. So why is it that Blake wasn't able to see Ilya in the darkness? Is it because she's actually camouflaged, or is this just an error on Rooster Teeth's part for not actually, you know, including that piece of knowledge with Blake? Because besides the fact that faunus are supposed to have great eyesight, Blake is also a cat, and cats have great eyesight in the dark at night. So that's just a question I had in the back of my mind. But that entire section with the lights being dimmed added more of a stealth choreography to the fight, which I really enjoyed. But the overall fighting choreography I thought was top-notch. Getting to see Blake drop her blade, catch it in the other hand, and then continue fighting with Ilya. Very, very cool. And also Blake using the fire and ice dust within her weapon. Very nice touch as well. And then a quick shout out, of course, to Gira being the beast that he was, fighting Corsic and Finnick on his own, even getting stabbed in the back, which got me a little nervous because if he got stabbed in the back, I'm like, wait a minute, could Gira go out in this chapter? But spoiler alert, both him and Kali are safe. They survived this chapter. And this all leads into the final moment of the fight where we see the sequence where Gira steps in to save Ilya from the collapsing pillars falling on top of her, Sun using his semblance to help Gira in the support of the beams, and then Blake using her weapon to tie it around Gira as Finnick is about to come in and deliver a killing blow, gets Gira out of there, and we see the top of the house fall on top of Finnick, and Finnick bites the dust, which honestly quite surprised me because I was not expecting Corsic or Finnick to die in this week's latest chapter. I kind of felt they kind of had more to do with the whole White Fang storyline, but Finnick ended up biting the dust, and once Corsic realizes that his brother is dead, he just goes into this fit of rage, yelling at the top of his lungs that the Belladonna family just ruined everything. But then Ilya comes in very, very clutch, switching at the last moment to Blake's side and knocking out Corsic with her weapon. And then she falls to the ground crying because she realizes the error of her ways, that she was on the wrong side the entire time. So once the dust has settled and the fighting is over, everyone kind of goes outside the house, and we see all of the faunus from the town, from the village, coming to the Belladonna household because they just realized a fire was just going on and they want to see all the damage and what was actually transpiring at the house. And Blake ends up delivering a very well done speech talking about hate and racism towards the faunus, looking at the Belladonna household and basically saying, humans did not do this to us. This was the faunus. This was faunus against faunus. You guys want to basically do nothing and just allow the hate to spread. And of course you guys don't want violence, but when faunus like Adam are out there, you guys don't even raise a finger to the stuff that they are doing against the entire world. You guys want a simple answer to a complicated problem, but I cannot provide that to you. I love that line throughout that entire speech, and her speech ends up rallying a majority of the faunus to join her on her mission to go to Haven and actually stop the White Fang from doing what they are about to do. And what I also like about this section is that it gives us a time frame for the Blake storyline, because as of right now, they are 2 weeks out from the attack on Haven Academy. And as we've kind of heard with Team Ranger, Crow and them, they are about 2 days away from the attack on Haven Academy. So there is plenty of time for Blake to rally the faunus on Menagerie, get to Mistral, get to Haven, and then join in on the fight, and we will finally have all 4 girls of Team RWBY reunited once again, and I am really looking forward to that. And also, shout out to the boat captain that got a nice little shout out from Volume 4, because Blake's like, well, I know a ship captain that kind of owes me and Sun a favor, and that was a nice touch to end on this episode. And that is basically the gist of what went down in Chapter 10 of Volume 5 of RWBY. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode, but I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts, theories, and opinions on moving forward with this chapter, but also for the remainder chapters of Volume 5, because we are going to be getting the Battle of Haven, I believe, for these last couple chapters, and I cannot imagine the amount of mayhem, battles, fights, and carnage that we are about to see take place, and whether or not this was going to be like the exact replica of Beacon, or with Blake and the faunus coming from Menagerie, will they be able to stop the White Fang in time in order to save Haven Academy from the same fate that Beacon Academy ended up having at the ending of Volume 3? So leave me your thoughts down in the comments below, guys. I love you guys so much, and I am really looking forward to these last couple chapters of Volume 5. We only have about 4 left until the ending of this volume, and it is going to be, I think, complete, utter mayhem, and I cannot wait for it. So until Chapter 11, which is going to come out in 2 weeks, guys, there's going to be a 2-week break until the next chapter for Volume 5 comes out. So during the week of Christmas, don't expect a new chapter of RWBY to come out. So Chapter 11 will come out in 2 weeks, but until then, I will talk with you guys later. See you guys.